Okay, so good to see everyone. The portion this week is VaYeitzei, and it starts on page 166 in the Eitz Chaim, or whatever Chumash you're using. It's Genesis chapter 28, beginning with verse 10. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. What I wanted to do is, and I know we've done this a lot, look at the beginning of the portion, but there's a lot in the beginning of the portion that teaches us about theology and teaches us about the merit of Jacob being a patriarch in terms of his faith in God. And his trust in God. So the context, because we're starting at verse 10, even though it's a new portion, we have to remember that this is the middle of a chapter. So what had just happened is that Jacob is told by Jacob is told by his mother Rebekah to run away to escape his brother's anger, because Jacob had just gotten the better blessing from their father Isaac. So Rebekah tells him to go to where she came from, north of Israel, and where Syria is today, like somewhere along there, and to find refuge with her brother and her brother's family, Lavan. So, VaYeitzei Yaakov mi be'er Shava, VaYelech Harana. So Jacob left Be'er Sheva and went towards Haran. Okay, so if we just picture geography, Be'er Sheva to Haran is going to be a long journey. It's not a journey you can do in a day. I mean, you could do it in a day if Syria had and Israel had normal relations. You could do it in a day today by traveling on one highway, essentially, to get there. But if you're traveling by foot, which it seems like Jacob might be doing, it's several. It could be several weeks, actually, to get there. 11. Vayifga bamakom, vayalen sham kiva hashemesh, vayikach me'avnei hamakom, vayasem mera'ashotav, vayishkav bamakom hahu. So he came upon a place. Now, the way it's worded in Hebrew, it could be understood as the place. He came upon, or he came upon that place. The English says here he came upon a certain place. It seems from the wording of the Hebrew, it's like a preordained spot. Like he knew he was going there and he arrived there. Okay, just the way the Hebrew is, as it doesn't seem from the Hebrew that it's a random place. What place it is, we have no idea. And the commentary doesn't, well, it says above the line, he came upon a certain place. Jacob stops at an unnamed place because it's impossible to travel in this region after sunset. Okay, the Hebrew word for place, makom, frequently has the connotation of a sacred site in later interpretations, but to Jacob it's a place with no tradition of holiness and he treats it with indifference. Okay, whatever it is, it's a place. And he decides it's suitable to stop there to sleep because the sun had gone down. And he took from the stones or the boulders of the place, or on on page 166, Barbara, in Eitz Chaim. We're just reading the beginning of the portion VaYeitzei. And he took from the stones of the place, and he put it under his head, and he slept in that place. Now, the rabbis understand that the place is the future site of the temple in Jerusalem, so that it is Mount Moriah that he came to. So Be'er Sheva to Mount Moriah, Be'er Sheva to Jerusalem. Again, if you're traveling by car, Be'er Sheva to Jerusalem is like an hour's ride, especially if you go on the new toll road expressway. It's not a long journey. But if you're traveling, let's say you have an animal, so you're riding on the back of an animal, you're not necessarily trotting, you're just going at a natural pace. I think even that would take more than a day from Be'er Sheva to Jerusalem. So the Torah makes it seem it's that day. So if the rabbis are saying it's Mount Moriah, it's not realistic based on how the Torah is describing the journey. Okay? But they're saying it because of the stones, and also it's just their midrash about how this journey is not just a journey of a guy running away from his brother. It's the journey of our patriarch Jacob. And because it's our patriarch, the rabbis say and teach that there's holiness about him, and that future events stem from the actions of Jacob. So it's not just any place, it's Mount Moriah, and the stones of that place, it becomes the stones for the temple in Jerusalem itself. Okay, so that's the midrash that helps us understand what place it is, that it seems like it's a preset place. Okay. 12. Vayachalom vehine sulam mutzav arza verosho magia hashamayama vehine malachei Elohim olim vyordim bo. And he dreamt, and behold, there was a ladder standing in the ground, and the top of it reaching into the heavens, or into the sky. And behold, angels of God are going up and down it. Okay, so on this ladder, or staircase. In modern Hebrew, a ladder is a sulam. So this could be something more substantial. It could be a staircase, something like that, a ramp, that there has enough room on it for angels to be going up and down it. Okay, so this is his dream. Now, I just want to point out that Isaac did not dream. God spoke to Isaac directly. Abraham did not dream. I mean by that, did not dream. Of course they dreamt, but their encounters with God were not through a dream. They are with direct communication, speaking as the Torah describes it. So God spoke to Abraham many times. God spoke to Isaac once or twice. And here, the first encounter that Jacob has with God is in a dream. Now, we know that his son Joseph is going to dream, and there's great power that's in the dreams that Joseph has himself, and that he interprets from the two people he's in jail with, and also he interprets Pharaoh's dreams. So we know from Joseph the power of those dreams. But this is the first time we're encountering someone dreaming and having an encounter with God in the dream. So I'm not sure. In other words, the Torah assumes that we understand that this would be a normal way in which God could communicate with a human being. We're not there doesn't have an explanation here, nothing like a parenthetical statement. This is another way that God can communicate with people. So we don't it's so because there's no explanation in the text of the Torah itself, the Torah assumes we understand that this is a normal thing, a normal way for God to communicate. So I think the editor of the Torah means for us to understand the entire text of the Torah, if not the entire Bible, as one whole story. And not just that, but also whatever happens in the story, whether early on or later on, is the same thing. So in other words, if we hadn't encountered a dream yet with God in it, that doesn't matter, because we're going to be encountering dreams later, and we encounter dreams even later than that in other books in the Bible. So all of that together, I think the editor of the Bible wants us to understand as one complete whole, so that all examples of dreams help teach us what the dream is. Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, so his dream is of these angels going up and down the ladder. Okay, and I've taught this before. The word sulam here, if you look at it in the Hebrew, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth line on the page on 166, the word sulam there, samach lamed mem. So the rabbis understand, they use gematria, right? The format of the system of interpreting words in the Torah by their numerical value, okay? And then coming up with new words that have the same numerical value to teach a lesson. So the numerical value of samach lamed mem is 60, 30, 40. So 60, 30, 40 is 130, right? 60 and 30 is 90, plus 40 is 130, yes. So the rabbis understand Sinai, as in Mount Sinai, that is samach yud nun yud. So 60, 10, 50, 10. So 60 and 10 is 70, and 50 is 120, and 10 is 130. Ha. So the word sulam adds up to 130. The word Sinai adds up to 130. So for the rabbis, this sulam is none other than Mount Sinai. And they do this just to, again, reinforce the message that Jacob, like Abraham and Isaac before him, are have experience with Mount Sinai, have experience with the Torah, and that here we are seeing that the dream of the angels going up and down is not going up and down a ladder, but going up and down Mount Sinai. Okay. 13. Vehine Adonai nitzav alav vayomar ani Adonai Elohei Avraham Abicha veElohei Yitzchak haaretz asher ata shochev aleha lecha etnena ulezarecha. So then he also saw God standing before him, and saying, I am God, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. Now, it's just interesting from the Hebrew that you would think that God would say, I am the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and Isaac, your father, right? It just says, but by saying, I am the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac, what does that mean? And I don't have an answer for that, and the commentary doesn't say anything about it either. Why does it say God, Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac? So I really don't understand. It's just unusual to me, and I think we're meant to question it, but I don't have an answer for that. But what God is saying is, the land that you are lying on, I am going to give to you and to your descendants. So God, the important thing here, despite how God introduces God's self to Jacob, which is odd, I am the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The promise is the same promise that God made to Abraham and to Isaac. The land, this is your land, and it'll be yours and for your descendants. And the promise goes on, which is the same promise that God had given before. 14, V'haya zar'acha ka'afar ha'aretz, ufaratzta yama v'kedma v'tzafona v'negba, v'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama uvizar'echa. And your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out westward and eastward and northward and southward, and all the families of the earth will be blessed by you and by your descendants. Okay, so you'll, as God said to Abraham, you'll be a source of blessing to other people. God is just saying it to Jacob too in a slightly different way, but they're saying this essentially the same promise. You are going to be a source of blessing for everybody on earth, you and your descendants, and you'll be as numerous as the dust of the earth. 15, V'hinei anochi imach ushmarticha b'chol asher telech, v'hashivoticha el ha'adama hazot, ki lo e'ezavcha ad asher imasiti et asher dibarti lach. And here I am with you, I will guard you wherever you go, and I will return you to this land, because I will not forsake you until I have done what I have said to you. Okay, I'm with you until this promise comes true. That is, that your descendants will be as numerous as the dirt of the earth, and you'll be a source of blessing to all. So God's going to be with Jacob forever and will be a guardian for him as well. Okay, so 16, Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnato, Vayomer Achein Yesh Adonai Bamakom Hazeh, Va'anochi Lo Yadati. Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, there is God in this place, right? So the same word as in verse 11, he came upon a place, and now he realizes that God is in this place. Va'anochi lo yadati, and I didn't know. So in other words, the rabbis might have known it was a special place. It became a special place because of Jacob having been there and the dream that he experiences, but the place becomes special as a result of the dream and God's presence there. It's unclear whether it had already been a holy site, but it certainly becomes holy as a result of Jacob's experience. Okay, 17, Vayira, Vayomar, Mano ra hamakom hazeh. Ein ze ki im beit Elohim v'zeh sha'ar hashamayim. And he was in awe, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate to heaven. Okay? Just so happens those are two good names of synagogues, Bet Elohim or Beth Elohim and Shar Hashamayim. There's a big synagogue in Montreal called Shar Hashamayim. There's a synagogue in Philadelphia called Shar Hashamayim. There are a number of synagogues around the world called Shar Hashamayim and Beit Elohim because of this, because of the origin of those phrases are from right here. So Jacob wakes up and realizes, and he's in awe. Okay, and so he names, and he understands that this is the house of God and it's a gate to heaven. So it's a special portal, it's a sacred spot, a place in which one, if one is in the right spiritual mindset, can experience God's presence. So this is what he says as soon as he wakes up. And then 18, Vayashkem Yaakov baboker, Vayikach et ha'even asher sam me'ra'ashotav, Vayasem ota matzeva, Vayitzok shemen al rosha. So then he gets up formally in the morning. So he wakes up from sleep in the middle of the night and recognizes this and makes this declaration, and then apparently goes back to sleep. And then gets up in the morning, right, at sunrise, and he takes the stone from which he was sleeping on, from under his head, and he makes of it an altar or a pillar, as it says here, and he pours oil on top of it, like to dedicate it as a sacred site. 19, Vayikra et Shem HaMakom Hahu Beit El, Ve'ulam luz Shem Ha'ir LaRishona. And he called that place Beit El, even though it was known as Luz beforehand. Okay, so we've encountered Beit El before. Abraham goes to Beit El, so he calls this place Beit El. So is it the same Beit El that Abraham went to? Is it a different Beit El? Not sure. And the commentary doesn't say anything about that. But what I really wanted to focus on is the last couple of sentences now in this first Aliyah. What God promised, and now what Jacob is saying back to God. So verse 20, Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor, im yihiyeh Elohim imadi, ushmarani baderech hazeh, asher anochi holech, venatan li lechem le'achol uveged lilbosh. So Jacob vows a vow saying, so it's a sacred vow. He has just sanctified the place, poured oil on a stone, sanctifying it, consecrating it as a holy spot. And so because of that, he feels that he can make a vow now to God. If God will be with me and protects me on this journey that I'm going on, and gives me bread to eat and clothes to wear. 21, V'shavti b'shalom el beit avi, v'haya Adonai li le'elohim. And returns me in peace to the house of my father, then God will be my God. Or yes, God will be my God. So before we just look at the last sentence there, so it's just fascinating. He just has this awesome experience. And based on the Torah, this is the first time he's had this encounter with God. And now it's possible he has had other encounters with God. It's possible that his father and his grandfather have been spiritual mentors to Jacob throughout Jacob's life. We don't know how old Jacob is here, but we assume he's well into adulthood. So it's interesting that if it's the first time, as the Torah makes it seems he has a lot of chutzpah to make this kind of vow. Like, wow, I just had this experience. Now I'm going to take advantage of it and see if I make a vow to God to make sure that I have this protection. So even though God said to him pretty explicitly, I'm going to guard you wherever you go. I'm going to protect you wherever you go in verse 15. And I'm going to bring you back to this land. God says that directly to Jacob. So why does Jacob have to say it? That if you do this, if you do what you say, then you'll be my God. So the commentaries have a tough time with this, and are upset or surprised that Jacob would make a vow like this, and they have to understand it in a slightly different way. So when I translated it in verse 20, if God will be with me and protects me on this journey, the word that I said if, the word there is im in verse 20. Many commentators said, no, don't translate it as if, translate it as when. So, in other words, Jacob is just reaffirming that when this all happens, then God will be my God. So that's still audacious to say, like, why isn't God your God now? You just had this holy, sacred, awesome experience in a dream. That should be enough for God to be your God. But so it's a little bit tempered from the if. If you do this, like that assumes that Jacob is denying this dream, and wants extra protection. Like, in other words, you have a verbal agreement with a salesman. Now the verbal agreement's not enough. Let's put it in writing. It's as if Jacob is putting it in writing to God to ensure that he's being protected. So so the rabbis are saying, no, he's not putting it in writing. He's just saying, okay, so I know that this will happen, and when it does happen, you will be my God. So until it happens, God's not going to be God of Jacob. So it's not a satisfactory enough kind of answer. Some commentators suggest that maybe it's a different aspect, that Jacob is receiving spiritual protection and physical protection, and that the dream is more of a spiritual protection, and the vow is a more physical protection. Like, Jacob is asking for bread and clothes, and God is more ambiguous in general terms, being a source of protection for Jacob, that everything will be taken care of. So perhaps some commentators suggest that the spiritual and the physical are coming together into the complete form of protection that Jacob is going to receive. And so verse 22, V'ha'even hazot asher samti matzeva ihiyeh beit Elohim v'chol asher titein li aser asrenu lach. So this stone, which I have made into a pillar, like a holy site, will be the house of God, and everything that God gives me, I will surely tithe to you. And some commentators suggest that Jacob fulfilled that tithe by giving his son Levi, or establishing his son Levi as the tribe of Israel that's in charge of the worship service, right? So that's just an example of how Jacob's vow was fulfilled throughout the generations, that the tribe of Levi, both the subset of Kohen and the rest of the tribe of Levi, are dedicated to God in their special tribal status. So, what we have here, I'll just want to end with this, unless people have a question or comment. Abraham and Isaac don't bargain with God. Abraham bargains with God about Sodom and Gomorrah, total strangers, and Abraham bargains with God about saving the cities from destruction if there are righteous people in the cities. That's the only kind of bargaining that we have from people in prior generations to Jacob. Like, where does Jacob come off getting the idea that you're allowed to talk back to God in this way, or in any way? Where can you come off? Like, how does Jacob justify this reaction to this very spiritual encounter that he has? It's just interesting to me. So perhaps one reason for it could be the tremendous fear that he has for his life. So he knows that Esau is out to get him. And that's something physical. That's something that he sees. God is just in a dream. And so perhaps he's been taught about his grandfather and Abraham's encounters with God, and how one of those encounters led to Abraham bringing Isaac and almost killing Isaac on Mount Moriah. So perhaps Jacob might be saying, maybe my grandfather should have asked for some kind of guarantee that Isaac wasn't going to be killed on Mount Moriah. So maybe as a result of learning about the encounters that his grandfather and his father had with God, Jacob takes the spirituality and makes it personal. So what I'm saying is, we as a reader might be more impressed spiritually, theologically, with Abraham's faith in God, his total trust, 100% trust in God. We as religious people might be more impressed with that, but in reality, as regular human beings like we are, we might see Jacob as a more realistic model for us, right? So if we ever could imagine having a spiritual encounter with God, perhaps the encounter that we would have and our reaction to it might be more like Jacob than it might be like Abraham. There's no way that the average human being could respond to an encounter with God in the Abraham way, which is a total saintly, 100% righteous kind of way. No average human being is like that. Most people maybe are like Jacob, just dealing with reality in our lives. He's dealing with a crisis in his life. His brother is out to get him, and he's going to a land that, according to the Torah, he hasn't been before. So and yes, it's his mother's family, but according to the Torah, he hasn't met them before. So he's going to a place that's of total strangers. It's maybe going on a journey that he's never been before. So that could be very anxiety provoking and very stressful. So he's traveling to a place he's never been. He's going to try to meet people he's never met before, and he's running for his life. So in all of that, if you get a dream like this, okay, that could be very comforting to have a dream like that. Like you can imagine having a nightmare and being woken up like somebody's chasing you, somebody has a weapon in their hand. So if somebody's dealing with a lot of stress, you can have a stress dream like that. This is not a stress dream, it's the opposite. It's a comforting kind of message that God is giving him. Everything's going to be okay. Calm down. Okay, so that's partly good, but the second half of that, when I wake up, okay, let's make sure that what I dreamt is going to be real. So I'm going to pour oil on this stone, make it into a holy site. I'm going to make a vow, a sacred vow, and then hope and pray that this dream will come true. So if we understand the story that way, I think it makes it makes the story of Jacob here something that makes more sense to us and is more relevant to us. This is a way that we could imagine ourselves reacting in a similar situation. So I think that becomes then a powerful message from this portion, the highfalutin language, the Beit Elohim, the Shar Hashamayim, how awesome is this place? All of that then is understood in this context of what's going on in his life, and that he's responding in a normal human way. Okay, any thoughts or comments or questions? So I wish everybody a good rest of the day. Hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Enjoy being with family and friends, and it's also hopefully we can be grateful for the blessings in our lives. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.